Good morning and welcome to our webinar, Happily Ever After, From Brick to Click. My name is Christina Del Villar and I'm the Director of Marketing here at Webgility, and I will be your host today. I'm going to quickly walk through our agenda. So we're going to start off with some housekeeping items. Then I will introduce Carla, our guest speaker, to everybody, and I'll talk a little bit about Webgility and our ECC product, but mostly we're going to focus on Carla and Wedding Collectibles and the story that she brings around planning and scaling your business. So for housekeeping, we just wanted to let everybody know that you're currently set on mute. If you have any questions, which we would love to receive questions throughout the webinar, you can submit them via the question box on your panel. And if we don't get your question, we'll try to follow up after the webinar with them. But again, feel free to ask questions throughout the webinar. This is a great opportunity. Carla is extremely open and happy to talk about her experiences, so I would definitely take advantage of that. Also, we will be recording the webinar, and we will make that available along with the slides in a few days after we get that produced for you. So. Perfect. So let me introduce our speaker, Carla. It's really fantastic for us to be able to get to know our customers, and in particular, this was great. Talking with Carla and understanding her business it was a really great opportunity for us. Her openness and insights were extremely helpful and welcome. I know everyone who's on the phone will get a lot out of what she has to say. So welcome, Carla, and thank you so much for being here.
Hi, you guys. Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to participate in this. It's
great.
Really interesting to help you guys out.
Which we really appreciate. Carla is the CMO of Wedding Collectibles. She coordinated the launch of that particular website, which is a wedding cake topper and bridal accessories website, and she's also launched a variety of other profitable e-commerce companies that have global delivery, mostly of retail products. So again, she's got a lot of experience. Some of her specialties do include e-commerce and strategy, marketing and branding. She's very familiar, obviously, with warehousing and shipping and customer service and support, and she's very good, and her company's very good at social media. So again, feel free to ask some questions as we go along, and she'll give you some insights as we go along as well. So now I just want to talk a little bit about what Webgility ECC does. So basically it acts as an e-commerce connector. So we work with over 40 different shopping carts and marketplaces, including Etsy, Shopify, Evolution, pretty much most of the shopping carts and marketplaces that are out there. And what we do is we take that information from the sales and we sync it into your accounting software, whether it's QuickBooks or NetSuite or Xero. So you have real-time understanding of what's happening with your sales, with your inventory. It manages multi-channel inventory, helps with your shipping operations, and one of the great things about it is it really gives you insight into the financial health of your business and even at the product level, so you can understand how that product is performing from a margin standpoint or volume standpoint. It basically removes the need for any data entry, which actually helps obviously with errors, because it just removes that process altogether, and we'll talk a little bit about that as we go along. And it improves the mood of business owners and customers, as Carla will tell you a little bit as well. So in terms of our products, we basically cover anything from cloud, desktop. If you need a hosted or managed service solution, we have that for you as well. And again, we work with QuickBooks, NetSuite, Xero. And so again, we're really here to help the businesses succeed and make it more streamlined, easier, and give you those knowledge and insights and financial intelligence that you might not necessarily be getting alone from either the marketplaces or your accounting software. So that's my spiel. We'll move on to more exciting things like Sales Forever After, a case study on Wedding Collectibles. And again, thank you so much for being here, Carla. It's great having you. In terms of Wedding Collectibles, I'm going to let Carla kind of describe what it is that Wedding Collectibles does, but before I do that, I just want to mention that if you have or have had a chance to go to the website, weddingcollectibles.com, I highly recommend it. It's a beautiful site. They've done a great job with navigation and organization, and again, regardless of what products you're selling, it's a really good example of how to create and develop your website and your business. So Carla, do you want to talk a little bit about what you guys are doing right now?
Yeah, sure. Well, in terms of the history, I see you guys gave these nice little bullet points. We did start back in 1980. It was originally my parents who started the business. And we were manufacturing and wholesaling primarily up through the 90s. So it was a very different business model back in that time. It was, primarily brick and mortar stores that were buying from us. We were selling to some stores like Michael's and large big box stores, but the internet still really wasn't, happening in terms of e-commerce. And pretty much once we hit around the year 2000, we started noticing a shift. Our sales were increasingly starting to slow down, primarily because our customer base was going out of business. Many of the small bridal stores were just closing their doors. They couldn't compete with the number of retailers online that were obviously selling at much cheaper prices. They didn't have the overhead, and they didn't need as much personnel, etc. And around that time, 2005 was when I graduated university, so I decided to step in at that point to take the company online. I had always participated with the business. I mean, as a family business, you're constantly surrounded by the inner workings of everything. Every family discussion at the dinner table revolved around the business, so it was always a part of my life. But at that point was when I really took a very active role to take the company in a different direction. And when we started online, we started primarily as a retail company. It was just the direction the industry was going, so that's what we did. And at the time, it really didn't have the competition that it does now, per se. So it was very open. There was so much room for growth. So when I launched Wedding Collectibles, there were really only about one or two other e-commerce companies that were selling wedding products like us, in terms of accessories and cake toppers and the like. So we were able to scale rather quickly. We built the website. We tried to do good SEO. And we started ranking within about 6 to 8 months. We started generating some real traffic and generating sales. And then as we continued to push our marketing, our growth really started to accelerate. And as is mentioned in the case study, I was trying to push our sales so much that suddenly we were looking at a 3-week turnaround time between the time an order was placed by the customer on our e-commerce site to the time when it actually shipped, because we had so much double, triple entry going on. We were still on the manual operations mode in terms of typing all the orders in, typing everything into QuickBooks in terms of our accounting, and then also typing all the addresses into UPS when it came to shipping. So the sheer volume of orders was taking that turnaround time, to an extreme level, which was really not acceptable. And I was trying to find solutions. I mean, this was not something that I wanted to be doing all the time, all this typing. So about a year or two before we started with Webgility, I started contacting different developers to find out what kind of solution we could have in terms of all this double, triple entry. And I did start with one developer, and it was a disaster. We paid them about $2,000, and they were never really able to deliver a product that we could use. So we ended up just dropping it and trying to move on to something, that would work instead of wasting more time. And at that point, in an Xcart message board, where you can always look up what's going on with the softwares you're using, someone posted a review about Webgility, and they were still a very, very small company, around, I think it was only like 3 people at the time. It was just starting out, and I read the description. I went on their website, I looked at their video, and I knew immediately this is what we needed. So I called them, pretty much just did whatever needed to do to get it going, and yeah, I mean, it worked seamlessly from the get-go. It brought our turnaround time to like same day or next business day, depending what time an order was placed. So it was absolutely incredible. Like our lives were changed in terms of, at the time it was me and my mother doing a lot of that data entry, so I was able to free up my time to do other things that needed to be done, such as marketing and product development and other aspects of operations. So it really was a game changer for us. and I'm sure, I mean, our customer reviews we would not been able to handle any more growth at that point, and that was years ago. And without Webgility, we just would not have been able to scale. I mean, why would you hire more people to do data entry when you should be probably hiring more people to do marketing or production? Data entry is something that's so simple. You almost take it for granted that it should be automated, but it really needed. At the time, there was no other software out there, especially geared towards small businesses, that was affordable, that would, you know, provide good customer service. There was nothing out there because I searched, and until it was really a great discovery for a company.
That's great, and thank you for that. And we'll go into a little more depth into some of the things that you just touched upon. But speaking of scaling, we wanted to actually have people take a tool so we can kind of get a feeling for what your monthly order volume is. So if you could take a few minutes and fill that poll out. You know, again, it's obviously increasing your volume and scaling is something that everybody wants to do. Sometimes you're growing and you're not prepared for it, which I know potentially happened with you, Carla, and it certainly happens with other companies as well. So it's not just important to think about, you know, how to plan to scale, but, you know, also what are you going to do, you know, if it's exponential or sort of immediate, depending on you know, the time of year, that sort of thing. So so I think, okay. I think we're going to show the results of the poll, and again, we're just trying to get a feeling for, you know, what's going on here. Let me see if I can actually share this with you.
I can see it on my end.
Oh, you can? Oh, great, excellent. I don't know if everybody else can. Okay, so basically, it looks like in terms of orders, wow, it's pretty evenly dispersed in the middle there between 100 and 3,000 orders. It looks like about 13% for each of those. Looks like about 50% of you are doing under 100 orders a month right now, which is interesting, and then about 7% of you are doing orders of 3,000 or more. So, so again, a little pretty evenly, you know, dispersed in terms of 50% doing under 100 orders and another 50% doing sort of larger volumes from that. So just kind of helps with us as we're talking through some of the next slides. So next up, wanted to talk a little bit about some of the challenges that you had. You know, we're talking about scaling. We're talking about some of the potential challenges of scaling. Every company is different, obviously, and company kind of goes through different life cycles. But I'm sure some of these will resonate with some of you. So, Carla, if you kind of want to talk about, and you mentioned some of them before, but you know, some of the business challenges you guys were experiencing and potentially are still experiencing these days.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of, well, yeah, I know I touched upon the data entry. That was huge. I mean, I can't stress enough how much time that took. We were sitting there in the office doing typing till about 8 or 9 o'clock at night during peak wedding season, and going there Saturdays and Sundays trying to process these orders just through our internal systems. It really, I mean, now that I look back on it, I can't believe we did that for so long, and at a much lower order volume than we have now. So it was pretty bad back then with all of that. In terms of, let me see, I mean, overhead costs, I mean, that's why we all go to e-commerce, right? We want to lower our overhead. We don't want to have to deal with paying for a retail location. We don't want to have to deal with extra personnel that we don't need to have. Customer service, though, is still extremely important. All that being said, which one thing with Webgility that helped us, of course, was getting that customer turnaround time. Back in the 2006s and 7s, people still didn't have the expectation. I think a huge issue in terms of customer service is Google is setting a certain expectation for a lot of customers. Not Google, Amazon, correction. Amazon is getting customers used to receiving their orders, well, with Prime, within 1 or 2 business days. At the most, maybe 4 business days, customers receive packages. And that's Amazon with all of their infrastructure and all of their you know, connections that they have with the shipping companies, and also with the prices they can negotiate with the shipping companies. It is a challenge when you are a small business owner with your own e-commerce website, and you can't ship every order second day air. So not only can you not delay shipping orders the way we were in the past, when brides still didn't have that type of expectation, a week or 2 weeks was still within the norm for most companies to receive, and people receiving products within that time frame. Nowadays, if people don't receive the product within the same week, they're calling us back. Oh, why didn't it get here in time, or blah, blah, blah. When maybe it was a personalized item that needed to go through a little extra production. It's just there's this different expectation that has been set now by e-commerce, large e-commerce stores.
Carla, it's interesting that you mentioned that, because we're Amazon Prime in our household, and there's a distribution center within 2 miles from our house, so we actually get same-day delivery now. And as a small business, you absolutely cannot compete with that.
It's not feasible. I mean, it's a really fine line to balance. I'm not going to say that it's an issue that's been fixed. There's an expectation being generated, and I mean, a small business like mine is on Amazon. I cannot afford to ship every single package UPS second day air. Even with my negotiated rates, it's not possible. So it's difficult. That's why we are really happy that at least we have the infrastructure that we're able to ship almost every single item either the same day or the next business day. That's one thing we're able to achieve. Now some items, like I mentioned, we do manufacture in-house. So some items, maybe they have to be painted and they have to have a 24 or 48-hour drying time, or they have to go through some special processes in terms of treating a product before it has to ship. Things like that, where that's the manufacturing process. You can't change that. But the moment it's like a few days after an expectation, people are following up, and you have to deal with it, and you have to provide customer service. And I mean, you try to let a customer know that there is a production time at the time of ordering, but most people don't look or bother.
No, fair enough.
Yeah.
And so one of the things you're talking about is basically getting the infrastructure set up to help you as much as possible. Again, there are just some things that you're not going to be able to do, whether it's because of volume or competitors out there like the Amazons. But again, I think getting the infrastructure set up is really important. And again, even though it's all about getting set up to scale and potentially coming up with a plan. As you guys did with Webgility and some of the other marketplaces you're working with. So we're handling online orders and managing inventory, and obviously you're using Webgility to connect to the online stores and retail stores with QuickBooks Enterprise. But sometimes you can plan all you want, and things kind of don't work out necessarily as you wanted. But if you want to talk a little bit about some of the benefits that you received from Webgility and some of the other, again, infrastructure components and technology that you put in place, I think that would be helpful for people.
Yeah, I think one other big benefit that we have from ECC is that it also not only connects to our QuickBooks and our e-commerce stores in terms of order importing, but it also connects directly into Stamps interface for postal service shipping, which is fantastic because right now they're our primary shipping company that we use. They have really great shipping rates. So it was, at the time that we started with Webgility, we still weren't shipping with Stamps or with even postal service. We were only shipping with UPS. And in order to become more competitive, we had to start looking at other, shipping companies to work with. And that was another happily seamless transition we were able to make. Since you guys were already compatible with Stamps.com, it was, once again, almost a no-brainer. We were able to make the switch and save quite a bit of money using Stamps.com on our shipping costs. And also, in terms of seamless integration, when we reached a point where we needed to scale to other selling platforms, third-party selling platforms, such as Amazon and Etsy and eBay, and our Shopify stores, once again, ECC was already integrated with these platforms, which was absolutely fantastic. We were able to not worry about opening stores on these platforms, design them as we needed to. All our products were imported. We were able to download orders and ship as if it was just, you know, another Xcart store. It was that seamless. It was great to not have to worry about the operations side of scaling in that direction, because we already had everything in place essentially to do that.
Right, which is great. So Carla, we have some questions coming in, and so I'll sort of intersperse them when I think it's appropriate. So someone's asking if you have a favorite sales channel right now, and if so, you know, why, or if you have, you know, multiple channels that you think are good.
I have to ask, favorite in terms of what? In terms of
you know what, they didn't state that, but let's just assume that it's in terms of, well, let's talk about, like, you know, ease of use, like which one is easy, you know, easier to kind of get set up on. And
I'll say it in terms of, I'd have to say, well, beyond owning your own, there's two different ways of looking at this. There's having your own e-commerce website, which you control your domain, you control all your prices, you control everything. You don't have to worry about other sellers jumping on your products like on Amazon. You don't have to do price wars per se. I mean, you just have to get your website to rank on Google, which, you know, it's a little bit of a feat, but if you have a good keyword niche, you can do it. Nothing beats owning your own domain and running your own website, which I would definitely say if you have a very diverse product line, I would not go with Shopify. Like if it was wedding collectibles with the number of products that we have, Shopify would not be a good fit. But if you have a smaller product line and you're starting out, I definitely would recommend Shopify. It's very easy to use. I was able to build and develop and code my own websites there. I didn't need anybody else to do that, and to create a website that eventually started ranking and converting. So that's on that end. In terms of third party, where, you know, you're not selling on your own domain anymore, it's a little less control, I would definitely say Etsy, particularly if you're a new seller. Etsy is a completely seller-oriented platform. You can always tell this simply because, I mean, if you sign up for Etsy, it's all about the seller's story. It's all about the seller's process. It's completely geared in terms of who you are as a seller, how you developed your product line, what you put into it. There's a much more emphasis on the process and the value of the product versus price, bulk sales. You know, that's not what Etsy's for. But if you're a new seller and you're learning how to sell online, Etsy buyers tend to be much more patient. They understand products are handmade, and also they're just also nicer people. You can Etsy has like a seller app, and if a customer sends you a question, it pops up on your phone like a text message. So a lot of times I end up texting. It feels like it's texting, but I'm using the app. I'm kind of just going back and forth with the brides answering their questions. And it's much more conversational. They treat you like a person, you treat them like a person. Versus on Amazon and eBay, that's definitely not what it is. you know, right. So that would be that I like.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, especially if you have a product that makes sense to be on Etsy. You know, it's a good sort of pilot or proof of concept if you're going from brick and mortar or you're just starting out. That's a really good, you know, again, it sounds like it's a little more comforting, if you will.
Well, it's Amazon, they're not about protecting their sellers. Neither is eBay. Everything is, right. I'm not saying it's not all about the customer. Obviously, you're selling a product. It is about delivering a product to the customer. But on Amazon, customers can easily take advantage. It has happened in the past to me. I mean, I think it happens to any volume Amazon seller, where you get people who take advantage of the A to Z claim process, or you have people right. who, you know, they just break something and return it, and you can tell, or they return things used, things like that.
Right. Great. So we just, oh, sorry, I was just going to say we just opened up another poll to get a feeling for what marketplaces that other people are selling on. So if you guys want to go ahead and take that, and Carla, sorry, you can finish up your statement there.
Oh, no, that was it. It was done.
Okay. Excellent. Yeah, so if you guys want to take a few minutes and Again, we've heard Carla talking about scaling and the plans to do that, and some of the infrastructure and some of the marketplaces that she's using and why. And again, it's some of it's dependent on what type of product you're selling, what channel makes sense. Again, if you're selling large volume, we have a lot of like car dealer part manufacturers, so Shopify wouldn't work for them because they have tens of thousands of SKUs. But otherwise, again, kind of think about what it is that you're selling. So we're going to go ahead and close the poll. So it looks like most of you are on Magento and Shopify, some of the on your own, using your own website. And again, Carla, they're on Xcart. Some of you are on eBay and Amazon, and then a lot of you guys have both your website and a marketplace, which again is what Carla is recommending. Interestingly enough, quite a few of you actually don't actually have anything set up yet, so that's interesting. About 23, almost 25% of you don't actually have something set up. So hopefully this is helping out so that you have getting some good information. So. Great, thank you for that. So we're going to talk a little bit, or Carla's going to talk a little bit about sort of her original plan on scaling and what they did. So we'll talk about what the original plan was. Next slide, we'll talk about why that didn't potentially work or could have been different, and then sort of how she's sort of streamlined things to grow going forward. So Carla, do you want to talk a little bit about sort of again what your original plan was?
Yeah, back in, the 2000, I call it basically pre-Panda Penguin, which if you guys aren't familiar, Google determines rankings on any search keyword. And how Google determines those rankings is always based on an algorithm that they have to determine relevancy of a product or page or website or whatever whenever you do a search. So periodically, or fairly often, Google makes changes to these algorithms to determine relevancy so they get, better search results. And there were two major Google algorithm changes that happened. I forget, it was probably around 2012, right around 2012, I think. Panda and Penguin, they always name them animal names, which completely changed how they determined who ranks and who doesn't rank on a search, a search that you would do on any particular keyword. So prior to these changes, we had been through algorithm changes before, but we were always white hat. We only did white hat SEO. We just tried to make a good website, good products, and we were ranking, very high for a primary keyword. So at that time, we knew what we had to do for that time period to rank very well. So the plan was to open more domain-based stores, Xcart. Well, we were using Xcart. I'm actually open to trying other shopping cart systems, but at the time, we wanted to basically just open more individual websites, slowly work on the SEO to get them to rank for the keyword terms, and just build the company that way. Just build multiple stores. Of course, then the Google algorithm changes happened, and pretty much everything that we had done, many aspects of SEO that were being done that were considered white hat from one day to the next became black hat. Once you are doing anything considered black hat by Google, you get pulled off. Like the search, we jumped down several pages in the search results. It was pretty devastating, and we were not the only ones. There were so many other, at the time, over the course of the 5 years since we started the website, there were more companies obviously that came out of the woodwork, and they all had stores. We all knew who was on the first page, second page of the Google search results, and many of those companies just completely went out of business. They did not survive. It was actually felt very bad because we knew who a lot of these other companies were. I mean, we weren't on non-friendly terms. We were all aware of who were the owners of these other companies, and it was very sad to see them. Some of these companies, they just completely went out of business. So that was a big game changer in terms of, well, should we open more Xcart or more domain-based stores? if it's going to be that volatile after this point. And pretty much what that new algorithm change dictated was, in the past, there were a majority of small businesses ranking for a lot of keywords out there. You could find mom and pop small businesses. When I say mom and pop, they could be $5 million e-commerce stores. That's still considered very small. But, you know, in terms of a small scale economy in a small city, you know, that's a pretty, you know, substantial company for an area.
Sure.
You know, I knew one of those stores on there was a store that big. And they completely went out of business after the algorithm changes. And after the algorithm, it became all big box stores who were ranking. In terms of, you now, where prior, you would not see Amazon or eBay or even Etsy. None of those were there. In terms of my industry, you have Party City, you have David's Bridal, you have The Knot. None of these search terms ranked for many e-commerce keywords for our industry. Suddenly, they dominated all the search terms, and that became the norm across many industries. You were now going to be competing against Amazon and eBay. Those are huge things in terms of fighting for keyword placement. So at that point, you have to say, well, do you join them or do you continue fighting? So at that point, I mean, what do? You have to jump on the platforms. If they're ranking, they're getting the traffic. That's the direction you have to go if you want to stay in business, and you have to move fast enough. We have to move very quickly onto these platforms in order to survive. I think that was the main reason why we did. And once again, Webgility was huge in facilitating that. It was not part of our business plan to jump onto third-party websites. In fact, something I did not want to do. But the nature of the industry changes. You have to move quickly to stay afloat. I mean, what else are you going to do? And Webgility was huge in making sure we made that transition smoothly.
Yeah, and I think, you know, again, it sort of, again, depends on what you're selling, but with the Google algorithm change and continuing to change, so you really never know where you stand with things. And like you were saying, you know, not only did Amazon, eBay, Etsy sort of take over that because they could spend the money on Google AdWords, the consumers themselves started, you know, going to those third-party sites again because of customer support, that the, you know, the reviews that you could see more of overnight or same-day shipping, that kind of thing. So
had the biggest impact in terms of that. Not only were they dominating the search results, but people were, I can definitely tell you, the shift in terms of consumers shopping on Google first versus just typing in whatever they're searching for directly into Amazon. I don't know if you understand like the difference between that. If I'm looking for sunglasses, pre all of this happening, you would just go into Google and type the word sunglasses or buy sunglasses or something like that, and you would see who would come up to buy from. Now, most people will just grab their phone and type it directly into Amazon's search, completely bypassing Google.
Yeah, and I admit I'm one of those people that does that, and if I don't like the price or the shipping, then I'll go out to Google and see who else is potentially selling it.
The primary stage, though, is changed. Your research stage of the buying process has changed completely. This was not the behavior 5 years ago at all. Like, that's not the way people purchased online. So, I mean, when you think about it that way, and you think about traffic, you know, how much traffic is Google bringing now versus before for the exact same keywords versus how much Amazon and eBay less, but how much has Amazon taken of that initial research stage? And if you catch someone at the research stage, you're more likely to keep them when they're going to convert. So
well, yeah, and interestingly enough, because the way the algorithm works, if I go to Amazon first and then I go to Google, they know about my Amazon search, so that is the first thing that pops up now as well. So kind of like a double. So talk a little bit about, you know, a little bit more about sort of that, you know, the streamlined growing, the flexibility of having multiple platforms, and sort of how you thought about new places to sell online and how you went about that process.
Well, I mean, the process is essentially what I was saying before in terms of the big box stores are now dominating search results. If you're not in the top page of search results, you are essentially not a player. you're essentially not really going to sell. So that's what determined what needed to be done. Prior to these algorithm changes, you had a chance. It was an open field. You could open a store selling, I don't know, anything, and you were not going to be competing against Walmart or, you know, Target. If, let's say, you wanted to sell sunglasses here on a brick and mortar store, you're competing against all the big box stores that are around the corner. Online, that wasn't the case. And then after those algorithm changes, suddenly they're there. They hadn't been ranking before. Now, of course, maybe if you're selling, I don't know, dresses, Macy's would be there in the past. But I mean, for a lot of small niche keywords, you didn't have to worry about Amazon ranking. Now, right. That is, Amazon ranks for everything in the top 10.
Right.
So does eBay. So does Etsy for a lot of keywords as well, in terms of handmade products.
So Carla, we actually have a question, and you're kind of sort of reaching, you know, some of that now. Somebody's asking what are the pros and cons of selling on Amazon and eBay. I don't know if you want to talk again. You've been sort of talking about like you kind of have to be on them.
Yeah. I was already a volume seller at that point on my own website. So I knew I already had the infrastructure to sell quite a bit volume. I had the process down, the turnaround time. That was all done. You need to be prepared. If you're going to sell a few items and you don't expect to get a ton of sales, fine. I mean, you don't have to really be prepared, I guess. But if you already know you have good pricing, you already have, you know, you're going to have a certain competitive advantage when you go onto one of those platforms, particularly Amazon. You need to have your infrastructure set up because Amazon is going to hold you to certain metrics. And if you do not meet those metrics, they will kick you out very, very quickly. Because I've heard other stories. I was slightly concerned when I started that I was, okay, you know, you have to ship within 2 business days and this and that and the customer service. And, you know, every time, I don't know if people are aware of this, every time you receive a message from a customer on Amazon, whether it be just an inquiry about an item or a direct message about an order, a question or something, you have 24 hours to respond to the customer. Whether or not it's the weekend or the weekday, whether or not you're sick or you're out of town, you need to respond within 24 hours. Otherwise, they start docking points from you in terms of your overall score as a seller. You know, things like that.
That's good to know.
Every time, just so you know, every time you email someone, a seller on Amazon, and if over the weekend, you're just making that person have to make sure they go to a computer and respond to you because they don't want to lose their metrics.
That's good to know. I will be more cautious go in the future.
Yeah, no, I mean, not that I'm complaining, because
I understand.
Thank God I have the app on my phone, and it's fine. I mean, I can reply, but those are things I had no idea about. I wasn't aware of. You know, all these little things. Also, it's very hard if you have a unique product, the way we do as manufacturers. It is very hard to protect your brand on these platforms. There are a lot of copycats that are sold. I have counterfeits of my product that exist, and people will try to sell on my listings counterfeits of my product made from shipping from China. I mean, this is the type of thing you have to fight. And I have to spend, I mean, at least 2 hours a week just going through all of my listings and making sure there aren't any unauthorized sellers selling my products, because of course, I don't know if you guys are aware, one product can have multiple sellers. That's another thing I didn't understand when I started selling on Amazon. So you can create a listing and someone else could just jump on it and start selling the same item or claiming it's the same item at a lower price.
Yeah, so, wasn't aware of that either.
Things like that you really are like, oh my gosh, how am I? And speaking of customer service, like it's one thing, you guys, Webgility, awesome tech support, customer service, like they go above and beyond. Amazon, not the case. When I was saying earlier how Etsy is a very seller-oriented company, Amazon is not. At the end, customer will always win almost any situation, whether it was warranted or not. So these are things you have to be ready for, ready to absorb costs, you know, loss. Not that there are a ton of losses, but you know, if you're only going to sell a few items, maybe you don't have to worry. But if you're going to be a volume seller, you're going to have to account for all of this when you start selling. So.
Yeah. So Carla, we're getting some questions in, and people feel free to, you know, to submit some questions. One person is asking if you can explain a little more about how to find these counterfeits, and then we'll continue on with your final solution.
Yeah, if you see what you think is a counterfeit, you buy it with your personal Amazon account, you receive it, you take a picture of it next to the authentic product, you then both file an A to Z claim so you get your money back on the money you spent on proving it was a counterfeit, and then you send an email to, I forget, it's like legal@amazon.com. You can contact Seller Central and ask them for the email address to report a violation in terms of brand infringement. But that's the process. Then you wait, and then you keep checking. And then eventually, if they did their job, it goes down. They pull the seller off of the listing. Or if you keep checking and then nothing happens, then you follow up until they do. And that's the process.
Okay.
But
I imagine that's happening on Etsy a bit as well.
It is happening on Etsy. What's nice about Etsy is a lot of times your own customers flag this for you. So that's the nice thing about Etsy as well, because it's much more like you're dealing with people. You know, they know you're a person, you know they're a person, obviously, and they like you, or, you know, you get to know other sellers. Like, I know another seller on Etsy, and I actually sell her product on my website. Not on Etsy, of course, because we're competing Etsy, but I sell it on my website. And I told her I saw some Chinese manufacturers were selling copies of her product using her images on Amazon. So I immediately left.
Wow.
And she started the fight to at least get them to pull down the images, you know.
Yeah.
But Etsy, I've had much quicker responses to flagging a product as a violation. In fact, on every single page of Etsy, there is a button in terms of where the seller's information is, where you can flag a seller as violating Etsy. So things like that, they're much more proactive about it. Yeah. I'm not going to say they're fantastic, you know, like the best ever, but I mean, when you compare it to Amazon, yeah, they're a lot better. So, excellent. Yeah.
Perfect. So, so again, you talked a little bit about how you started off and tried to have a custom-made program. That didn't work, so you worked with Webgility, Xcart, Amazon, Shopify, and a bunch of other vendors that are out there. And so now you sort of have the solution that's working, you know, right for you, at least for now. Can you talk a little bit about sort of some of the results, either from, you know, just basically from all the different applications and technology that you're using right now?
Results in terms of, I mean, I was able to focus on my marketing a lot more. So I would not have been able to scale to other third-party sites if we would not have had Webgility in place in the first place, because of the time we were taking for data entry. I didn't have time to do almost any marketing. We had already farmed out our SEO to a really great company. They're the ones who made the magic happen after a certain point in terms of our Google rankings. You know, prior to all the Panda Penguin upheaval, they're still doing an excellent job. But you know, we went through a big dip during that time frame. But if we wouldn't have had our operations streamlined to the point where I could focus on other things than just operations, I wouldn't have had the time to put together launching onto the third-party platforms, which if anyone knows what that process is like, especially when you have quite a few products to upload, you have to work on these massive spreadsheets that Amazon gives you that you have to fill out all these columns. I mean, these spreadsheets are like 50, 60 columns long. You don't use every column, but you have to go through, know what each column means to make sure everything's filled out properly, so then you can do a mass import into Amazon of your product line. And it took a lot of time to do all of this, and to do the research into how I was going to even, make the process work out, whether I wanted to do Amazon. Like I said, I had fought it for a very long time, and so I went through a 2-week research phase where I just went and read everything I could about, jumping onto the platform, and I mean, I didn't have time to do things like that before. It was just extremely difficult to focus on other things when you have that much data entry, and you see your orders are piling up. it gets pretty difficult.
That's great. Yeah, and so in the case study that we had, we pulled some of the data from there where your data entry went from about 80 hours a month to 0, because again, it syncs automatically, so there really isn't any data entry now, which is great. And again, the fact that you can fulfill your orders, which is key, especially if you want to be on Amazon, having that ability to have that information and that real-time information so that you can do your fulfillment in a day versus 3 weeks. This is pretty key. So, yeah, and again, I think there's a lot of again, it depends on what people are selling, but I think there's a lot of different marketplaces and shopping carts that they can leverage, which is great. So, we're getting a ton of questions. So we're going to go ahead and move to the Q&A section. So I will let you. We'll try to pick some of these out and try to get through as many of them as we can. So somebody kind of going back to preparing your products and safeguarding them, they want to know how you can sort of prepare to safeguard your brands or products. This particular person is developing a T-shirt line. They want to see if there's anything in particular they can do, besides sort of scoping out what other people are selling. But what can they do sort of ahead of time to safeguard that?
T-shirts are hard because when you have companies like, I forget, not Threadless, but, I don't remember. I mean, people print T-shirts all over the place very easily, so I mean, that's a toughie. But what the first thing you should do is try to get brand registry. It's a program within Amazon where you basically register your brand, who you are, you're the creator, no one else, can change the, there's an area in every Amazon product page where it lists the brand of the item, like the company that makes it. If you don't own the brand registry on that particular item, any other seller can go in and change it. So things like that, you can suddenly at least have some type of protection. It's a little bit of a process to get the brand registry done. Thank God I already had what was called a UPC exemption, which is the old version of brand registry. Since Amazon was, I guess what I didn't mention this part. What got my foot finally through the door with Amazon was that they contacted me to put my products on Amazon. So I had the help from their business development office. They're the ones who kind of got the ball rolling. With them, I was able to immediately get all that process done in terms of making my brand a protected brand. But the problem was, since I was also a wholesaler, many of my wholesale customers had already created my items within Amazon with their own company as a brand. So I ended up having to do a massive amount of cleanup, and that's what's going to take really the protection of your product. Nothing is going to do it better than you sitting there on Amazon, typing in different search terms to see if your product comes up as a copy by someone else. Who is that seller? Are they an authorized wholesaler? If you have one, if you don't have any, then they really shouldn't be selling anything. So then you have to flag them by doing the process that I stated before of either purchasing the product, to prove side by side in a picture that it's a copy, or you can try to send a violation notification to Seller Central. It's a much slower process. It's really hard. Like I said, I have to spend a couple hours a week just sitting there combing through my listings, making sure nothing looks out of order.
Interesting. So you have to be your own advocate, at least for now.
No, yeah. And of course, large companies pay people to do this, to sit there and protect their brand. But, when it's just you have, if you're really going to try to protect your brand, I mean, you have to do it yourself.
Yeah, which is hard if you don't have if you're spending all of your time doing data entry or working on your shipping. So so one of the questions we have is how do you decide, and again you can kind of take this question for however you want to answer it, because it's a bit vague, but how do you decide which items to list on each channel?
Oh, well, I mean, Etsy is very clear. You can only sell handmade products by you or your team, which if you have like a small team of people helping you, that's pretty set. They also allow the sale of craft supplies. I think that's the only non-handmade part of their website. So that's pretty much it. I'm trying to think. In terms of, you look at your competition. You type in the main keywords directly into these platforms and you look at who's there. You look at how much the product is going for, any similar products. You can tell very quickly whether it's saturated or not, or whether you have an edge at all price-wise, or whether you have like some type of variation of the product that becomes very enticing to the consumer. But it's hard if it's a completely saturated product line. And also some product lines are by approval basis only within Amazon. For example, I know the jewelry section, you can't just decide to sell jewelry. You have to be an approved seller to sell jewelry. You have to be approved to sell within the jewelry category. So let's say I don't sell jewelry, but let's say I decide I want to sell wedding rings. I can't just go start putting up wedding rings. I have to go through an application process to see if they will allow me to sell jewelry on their jewelry section, things like that. But a lot of it's just doing your own research. I mean, you can tell.
So Carla, this is a great question. It's saying, as a wholesaler and a retailer, how do you balance, how do you balance being a retailer who competes online potentially with other resellers? How do you manage that?
You create two different brand names. That's what you do.
Okay.
That's what we do out of respect for our other wholesalers. I will tell you, there are many companies I'm talking bigger companies that are, large manufacturers of stuff. They don't even bother doing that anymore. They will literally wholesale and retail off the same website.
Wow.
So, and I find that like, whoa, I mean, why would you want to sell that company's product if that's what they're doing,
Interesting.
But yeah, that's what we do.
I guess that's one strategy.
Yeah.
So one question we have, and they're asking specifically about the wedding season, but this would be, true for any holiday season. But how do you prepare for the wedding season, and when do you actually start that preparation?
What do you mean? Oh, I wish I could go back and forth. What do you mean by prepare? You're always prepared all the time. I mean,
yeah, well, again, I guess, like, for example, let's just say that the wedding season starts in June. I'm just making it up. I know it's year-round, but like when, if you're saying you're always preparing.
You want to make sure you have stock. You want to make sure you have your inventory. You need to know that you need to have X, Y, and Z products to at least this inventory level to be sure you don't run out halfway through, because that would be a huge loss of sales. You time your product development for the off-season, right, so that you can, have all those products ready for wedding season. But that's more on the manufacturing side. And in terms of your e-commerce side, you just want to be sure your rankings are solid. You don't stop doing SEO during the slow season just because it's slow. I mean, SEO works with around a 6-month turnaround time. So whatever rankings you have now are from the work you did 6 to 8 months ago. So it's not a matter of make sure you're prepared. I mean, you should always be prepared. You should always be doing these things.
Excellent. So for the holiday season, you should have started June 1.
well, I mean, I mean, if you are a holiday seller, you should be doing all your buying and placing your inventories probably a month ago. so that you
exactly.
get all your orders in with your vendors, so that you time the container loads come in from China, and then I don't know when they get them. They probably get them around September, and then everyone probably gets their product around late October. I mean, you have to. That's industry standard, though. I guess if you're a new seller, you wouldn't know, but all of this is like 6 months in advance that you go through.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So somebody's asking, this is a great question, what, who do you, Carla, who do you follow in terms of industry experts, or, what publications do you subscribe to, or blogs do you look at to sort of help you, look at what's happening in the industry?
Yeah, I definitely like Internet Retailer Magazine. I know we were talking about it yesterday, Abby. Is that the official name of it?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so yeah, that's a fantastic magazine. I like them a lot. They give weekly, I think it's even bi-weekly newsletters online, and they also have an actual monthly hard copy publication, and it's all free. So I guess this is a free plug for them. They're a very informative magazine. A few others that I like Moz.com. That can also get a little overwhelming, but it's definitely an informative website when it comes to SEO rankings and best practices if you have your own website. That sort of thing.
They've been around for a long time, and they continue to understand the industry. So
I think they're like the benchmark for in terms of white hat stuff.
Great.
Two main ones, I think.
Sounds good. So we're almost out of time. So I have one last question for you, and then we'll wrap this up. One is, and again, feel free to discuss it in any way you feel is not going to impact anything you're doing or from a competitive standpoint. But how do you market your product in your stores?
How do I market it in terms of outside of SEO? Blogging is huge. Blogging. You need content, and a lot of it is actual external content that you get posted on other websites. That's actually a pretty in-depth question, because Google is changing what they like in terms of external links and how they're formatted and what words you use. That's actually pretty in-depth, but I think the biggest draw is to make sure you have external content written by you or someone in your company, referencing back to your company the way Google likes it. That's probably one of the main things you can do to really help your search engine rankings. If you mean marketing, I mean, there's always adverts, but it's extremely expensive.
Sure. So maybe we'll have you back and do a marketing Google Word webinar someday.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, I want to thank you. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I hope that was helpful.
Oh, yeah, and this has been really, I mean, I've learned a lot as well, which is fantastic. I'm sure everybody on the phone has learned a lot. So just want to take this last few seconds here to thank you, Carla, so much. Again, I think it's been a great webinar, and hopefully everyone else on the line got a lot out of it as well.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Great. All right, everybody, have a great day, and again, thank you for attending.